Toby Young is the founder of the Free Speech Union and of the Daily Skeptic, both fine institutions. Toby, is Liz Truss a Margaret Thatcher for our times?
Well, I think she's doing a pretty good impression of one at the moment, and she'll certainly get my vote as a Conservative Party member. I can understand people's cynicism about her supposedly ruling out another lockdown. I mean, if someone had asked Boris Johnson during the 2019 leadership campaign if there's an outbreak, a global outbreak of a flu-like virus which poses no real threat to those under 65 with no underlying health conditions, with one or two exceptions, would you shut down schools, lock everyone in their homes, mothball the economy, effectively bankrupt the country? I expect he'd say, no, I won't. And yet he did. So I don't think we can take this to the bank. And, you know, it's not exactly a manifesto pledge. It's a slightly grey area. I mean, who's she making that promise to? The Conservative Party membership, which is slightly under 200,000 people, so 0.3% of the population. Can you hold a politician to a promise to such a tiny fraction of the population? But having said all that, you know, I've been campaigning against the lockdown policy now for the best part of 2.5 years. I think it was the biggest policy error ever committed in the history of the world, a catastrophic error. And for a major politician, probably our next Prime Minister, to rule out another lockdown is a massive win. And, you know, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think that I think it's sad that she's taken 2.5 years to catch up with you, and I think at least 2 years to catch up with dear old Van Morrison, who was, you know, who was quite right about this. But she's up against a guy who can't even say anything like that. You may be right. Liz Truss may something, you know, the monkeypox will come along in some new variant, and Liz Truss might reverse it. But if she's up against a guy who can't even say that now, that's all she has to be, isn't it, to win?
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like she will win. And I think she has fought a better campaign than him, and she has been more direct, and I think people do have a clearer sense of what they're going to get with her than they do with Rishi. She seems less like a creature of the kind of international global elite than him. She said she's going to pause net zero, which is more than he said, and, you know, that's very welcome, and it would be even better if she said she was going to scrap the target altogether. But the fact that she says she's going to pause it and look again at it and reevaluate it and do it in a more proportionate way, that's, you know, we should welcome that too. And she's been reasonably robust about free speech. We know that when she was an equalities minister, she paused self-ID, the reform of the Gender Recognition Act. So, you know, she does walk the walk as well as talk the talk on those sorts of issues. I'm hoping that even though Nadine Dorries is on Team Liz, that she will scrap the worst aspects of the online safety bill, Nadine's baby. Nadine says she won't, but I'm not sure. I think we have to take that with a pinch of salt. Nadine hopes she won't, but I think she probably will. So I think that's another reason to support her. I mean, for my three big issues are net zero, lockdowns, and woke gobbledygook of all kinds. And on all three things, she seems to be, you know, much sounder than Rishi and sounder than Boris.
Well, Rishi does come over just as a parody of the disconnected globalist who, you know, I don't want to go on about his green card and all the rest of it, but you do get the feeling that he can just move on and settle anywhere on the planet, and he's completely disconnected from how real people live their lives. But what about, you know, you didn't mention it as one of your three issues, but certainly it would come as one of most Tory voters' issues. This business of the migrants arriving. Are we just supposed to accept now that certain absolutely primal things are actually beyond the capacity of the government to do anything about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what her position is on that. I'm sure it has come up in the hustings and will come up again. But, you know, I would imagine that she's more likely to stick to the policy of deporting illegal migrants to Rwanda than Rishi would. You know, you get the impression that she'd be slightly more robust. I mean, maybe not as robust as we'd like, but slightly more robust than Rishi on that policy.
Well, I sort of put lockdown in that category because I think it's one of these things where you're up against all the clever people, all the experts. All the experts agreed that you were actually one of the first people very early on in this to say, no, this is going to be terrible. But basically everyone said, oh, well, look at these guys with knighthoods who are flanking Boris every day and saying, oh, we just need to lock down for another 2 weeks, 7 weeks, year and a half, and everything's going to be fine and dandy. I mean, this is another one of these issues where the elites have all the answers, and the rest of us are just supposed to accept their expertise.
Yeah, and I think one of the things in favour of Liz is that she does acknowledge that, not everything is rosy in the garden. The country's in a mess. Inflation is the highest it's been for 40 years. We have a cost of living crisis. People can't afford to pay their energy bills. I think she recognises that, we are on the brink of a major crisis and we need to try something new. We can no longer trust the old solutions. We can't trust the traditional elites to get these sorts of calls right because they've got them so wrong over the last 2.5 years. And I think when she comes out and says something like, I'm ruling out locking down again, even if you don't completely believe her, I think it's important that opponents of the lockdown, people who've been campaigning against lockdowns all this time, should support her. I mean, politicians often say to me, I get into a lot of trouble when I take up a contentious position like that. And she's been condemned by all the usual suspects, so she's got to get some reward. If people like us don't come out and support her when she says something like that, she's not going to say something like that again.
You wrote a rather sad column saying, oh, we blew it, we failed. I've been opposed to lockdown for years, but I failed to convince a majority of my fellow Britons to go along with it. We lost the argument. I don't think that actually is the case. I think the Liz Truss thing is where the voter base are. So it may have taken longer than you expected, but I think ultimately no one thinks lockdown is great if you want more inflation, if you want more dysfunction at Heathrow and the rest of the travel network, but no, and if you want more damage, mental health damage to our kids and all the rest of it. But I don't think anyone seriously would jump for lockdown, other than a few of these media buffoons.
Well, I hope not. Maybe I conceded defeat a little too early, and actually, the anti-lockdowners have gone on to win the argument. But I think I'm hoping, that this is actually a preview of what will be a commitment she'll make during a general election campaign, at the next general election, and that'll be clear blue water between her and Keir Starmer, who was always for faster,
more lockdown,
harder, more lockdowns.
You're very clever to do this head-faking thing where you say, oh, I think we may have lost the argument. That's what Nigel did on Brexit night. He came on at 10 o'clock and said, I think we might have come up a little short. So I thought, screw this, I'm going to bed. I woke up at 4:15 in the morning to an ashen-faced David Dimble. So you're trying the same thing. Thank you very much, Toby Young.